All right, so what's going on now? I'm going to make a heptagon, the real big heptagon. What's a heptagon? It's a 7-sided figure. Google it, dude. Come on. Listen, this is a weird project because I have no idea what I'm doing as usual, and it's really taking some time. So I found a cool geometry calculator on Google, obviously. And what you can do is put in a specific measurement, whether it's a side or the radius or whatever, and it'll tell you the angles and the side lengths and all that, right? So found something on Etsy that that we wanted, and then I was like, I'll just make that myself. So I got the measurements of that, so I know the diameter. I have the diameter to get the radius, put the radius into the heptagon calculator, and that gives me the lengths and the inner and outer angles. So before I waste a whole bunch of my materials that I just went and bought, I made a little model here just to see how I was going to make these cuts. Took a little trial and error. Now, if you have the outer angle, which is this right here, which is around 51 degrees, you're going to get this miter. So basically, if you cut 25.5 degrees, you're going to make a miter. I don't just want to make a miter because I don't feel like that's going to be very stable. I mean, it could be, but also I want to make this portable or modular because it's going to be like, I don't know, almost 7 feet in diameter. So what I'm going to do is make some lap joints on it like this. So basically we're just going to be cutting like a dado, or basically just cutting half of the board away along its thickness rather. And then they'll snap together like this. Now it took me some time to figure this out, what angle do we cut? And it turns out you just cut the same angle as this external angle over here, right? So if you put your miter gauge up to this angle, you're going to get 51 degrees. And that's what I did over here. Set the miter slate up to 51 degrees, cut these sections out, and we get a rough idea of what this is going to look like. So the idea is that we're going to cut the rest of the big boards like this, and then I'm going to drill a couple of holes here, put some T-nuts in there, and then this way I can use screws, put each individual side together, connect those up so I can break it down later and store it out of the way instead of having, a friggin' 7-foot heptagon just hanging around in the shop. So we somewhere around 7 feet in diameter. It's probably going to be slightly smaller than that just out of the interest of minimizing materials. So I bought 8-foot 1x4 material, cut it in half to get 48 inches to each piece. And then what I did on one of these was mark a 51 degree angle from one corner. And the reason I did that was so that I could measure this face right here. And it ends up being about 4 7/16 of an inch. Because of this angle, it's going to be slightly longer than this straight face here. Now, what that does is tells me I need to make a cut, basically a dado, and remove all this material here down to about 4 7/16 of an inch. So when I overlap these, they're going to overlap in a way that isn't using up a ton of material. It's going to be easier to cut off flush later, and it'll also make it more stable. So you want a complete overlap here. Now, by doing that, I know I've got 4 7/16 of an inch on each end of this board that's basically going to be overlapped, so I'm losing that length. Now, if you add those together, you get almost 9 inches, and that leaves us about 39 inches of face on the inside. So that's going to reduce our diameter a little bit, because at roughly 7 feet, or about 86 inches in diameter, each side is going to be 41 inches. So we're losing a few inches, but I think it's still going to be big enough to do what we want to do. So I'm going to start making these cuts. I'm probably going to screw this up, but you get to watch all of that. All right, so we got all 7 of these cut, and this is the idea. We'll cut roughly half the thickness on opposing sides of each board, and they should lock together like this. And they're pretty stable once you get them all together. This, in my opinion, is going to be way more stable than simply cutting miters. And then we'll cut this chunk off later and over here, so it'll all be consistent angles there. Now my hopes are to drill holes in these in a couple of different places, and put some T-nuts down here, countersink some holes here for a couple of screws, and then this will make it way easier to store, because you hopefully unscrew it all, snag it in a flat stack, and get it out of the way. All right, let's drill some holes. All right, so got the holes drilled. Countersunk those on the front a little bit, and then re-drill the bottom with a 5/16 inch bit, because I'm going to put these little T-nuts in each hole. So these go down in the hole. These little metal prongs kind of hammer into the wood and hold it down, and this will allow us to screw in from the front, and it'll accept this 1/4 inch machine screw like that. So we'll put a little CA glue on there to hold that a little better. Just start hammering. So we got it together. Found out that really needed more than a couple of screws here. So I added 2 more T-nuts to the back, countersunk for 2 more bolts in the front, machine screws, whatever you want to call them. So that's the rough design. I've set it up to make some measurements, and I'm going to cut some 2x4s that will rest perpendicular along the bottom here. I'll probably do 2 of them, and that will hopefully be enough stability. We might need to make a third. So I measured the thickness of the bottom here. I'm going to try to put that roughly here, maybe over just on the edge, missing that bolt. That's 7/8 of an inch thick. So we're going to set up our dado. Cut a 7/8 inch dado out of this. Probably about 1.5 inches deep or so, maybe a little more. We don't want to take too much off of this, make it weak. So these are about 38.5 inches. That's just, I had a piece laying around that size, and I assume that's going to be enough to stabilize it. So we're going to set the dado blades back up here, cut those out. And I think I'm going to go ahead and, well, we'll make 2 for now. So it fits pretty tight there. And it holds it upright. This thing isn't, you know, going to withstand a hurricane, but let's hope it doesn't have to. Got one coat of stain on. I like that color, so I think I'm going to leave it that way, but we got to ask the boss first. If she approves of it, I'll probably put some spar urethane on it, just for the sake of making it last a hair longer.